Okay, Patrick, thank you for joining me today on this Maxi Saver interview and documentary. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Okay, got some questions here to throw out to you here. First one I want to ask is, what made you decide to want to work at the Maxi Saver?
Well, I'd had a string of jobs I didn't particularly care for, and I would go by there every so often. And I had previously worked at a second-run movie theater for about 7.5 years, and I really loved it. And so I kept seeing the Maxi Saver building, and I finally was I kind of set it as a goal. I was like, one day I'm going to work there, and I just decided to make it a reality, and just went in and applied, and it just kind of happened from there.
Oh,
but
okay.
I decided that that's where I want to be.
Right. Now, you mentioned another theater. The thing is, can you mention the name, or is it a place that you shouldn't mention, or is it a place that's still open?
It's a place that's still open.
Okay.
It's actually located in Fairfax, Virginia. It's this place called University Mall Theaters.
Okay. Because you're not originally from Pittsburgh, correct?
From Virginia.
Okay, from Virginia. Okay. Thinking about this other theater, to kind of compare them, because you mentioning this, anything, was there one theater better than the other kind of thing? I know you mentioned that you were at the other one for about 7.5 years, and if I may add one more, how long were you at the Maxi, may I ask?
About 2 years.
About 2 years. Okay. So you have a big jump on the other theater. Is there anything that you like better one than the other, or is there like favorites on both, less on both?
I like the people at both of them. Theater people tend to be kind of unique.
Now, when you mean theater people, the employees or the customers or both?
Generally the employees.
The employees,
You'd have some interesting customers, but in that instance, the employees, the people that work there, they tend to be pretty interesting people, and a lot of times, at least with sort of, the second-run theaters I've been at, I have worked at a major chain theater very briefly, and that wasn't the same.
Okay.
In terms of the environment of the people, and I guess the Maxi Saver technically is part of a chain, but in spirit it was much more like University Mall Theaters in Virginia, which was just a privately owned little second-run theater.
Okay.
So it was very much like a private theater in regards to the people. I liked coming into the Maxi Saver, as a projectionist, and just kind of going upstairs, and I kind of like my privacy and my quiet and stuff, so it was nice to be able to just kind of go upstairs.
So that was your main job, was working with the films and the projectors?
The projectionist.
Okay. Now, this particular theater, was it film, was it digital, was it both?
As far as my main job in that question, are you talking about at the Maxi Saver? Or?
At the Maxi, sorry. Yeah, that's what the main one's going to be. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was projectionist there. What was...
The question was, did you work with film? Did you work with digital? Did you work just film? Now, how was it? I know that a lot of stuff now is digital. How was working, first off, at a dollar theater, working with film more than digital? Did it feel easier? Do you know much about the digital part of it?
I don't know too much about the digital stuff. As I understand it, it gets shipped in hard drives. They basically ship a hard drive to the theater. It's put into the computer out by the projector, and then the manager goes up and hits a button. Right.
Now, with film, especially I think film must be a little bit more difficult, correct? Could you walk us through how you're going to do that kind of stuff?
Well, it's shipped in these big boxes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes 2 boxes. They usually weigh more than I do. They're pretty heavy boxes, and then it's shipped. You have to take it upstairs. The film comes in reels, and you've got to basically put the movie together. You have to put the ads on and stuff first, and the trailers. Then you stick the movie on there. So that's a whole process. And then you have to do that in reverse when you get rid of the movie. Take it apart,
right.
Put it back in the boxes. But you have to put the proper reel of the film onto the the proper actual plastic reel, so that the next theater it goes to, they can actually put the movie together.
Right. Okay.
So it's a bit more of a process than just having a hard drive shipped in.
Right. Right. Could you name a possibility? Because you said you just worked upstairs, didn't really work that much downstairs with the people. Can you name any films that were there maybe just a week, or films that was maybe there for like months or anything, and that maybe you were kind of surprised, good or bad, one way or the other?
The last Batman movie was there for a long time. I wasn't surprised by that, but that one just sticks out in my mind. It was.
What you're talking about, the one with Bane and Catwoman, right? Dark Knight Rises. Okay. So.
It was there for a while.
And it was close to a 3-hour film too, right? So you didn't have that many showings with it. Okay. After you got your phone call and you got your interview, what was your interview like, and who interviewed you, if I may ask?
Well, when I brought the application in, I gave it to Doug, and I just kind of told him a little bit about myself and that I'd worked at a theater previously. And at the theater in Virginia, I did a little bit of everything. I was actually closing manager there, so I sold tickets, I sold concessions. I wasn't putting movies together there and taking them apart, but I was playing them.
Right.
And I would have to fix them if something went wrong. So it was a little bit of everything, and then, so I kind of told him about that, and just basically said I was looking forward to hearing from them. I did hear from them. I came in for an interview, and I felt it went really well, and
right.
And I took the job.
Now, was it Doug that interviewed you by chance?
Rose.
Okay. Now, may I ask who Rose was in that theater? Was she a manager, assistant manager, or what was her title?
She was the manager.
Okay. Like the general manager, like they say? Okay. If you can remember, I know that you said you were there for the Maxi about 2 years or so. What was your first day like? Or maybe I should say it this way. You mentioned that at the old theater you didn't really put movies together and take them apart. Let's go with, for you, what was your first day like when you were taking movies apart or together, however way you want to look at that?
Well, I had to be trained how to actually put them together and take them apart.
Yeah.
I already, having worked in a theater, I already knew how to splice a movie and stuff, but I had to learn some of the more technical parts of actually assembling them. I don't have any specific recollections of actually being taught. It kind of blends together.
Yeah.
But I picked it up relatively quickly.
Okay.
As I remember. I was, as far as actually starting and just running the projectors and the day-to-day work, I was excited about it, and I was looking forward to starting there. And I had a little bit of an advantage because half the projectors that we had were the ones we had in Virginia, so I already knew how to run those. Right. But the other half that we had, those were kind of new to me, and they kind of had to work with me on those a little bit. I picked that up pretty quickly. And I actually, in the long run, I found those easier to thread than the ones I was used to working with. Right.
Now, when you said, because now I know there were 12 screens in this, when you say half you knew, half you didn't, which half did you know? The first half or like the second half, like the 7 through 12 projectors? Which ones are you talking about?
The 7 through 12s.
So the more, okay, gotcha. When you first actually started working at the job, was this a job that you liked right away? I know you said you did this before, or is it one of those things you thought, well, completely brand new, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not? What was your first experience? How long did it take you to really like this job?
I pretty much liked it immediately. I was looking forward to starting there, and I kind of came there because I knew that I liked working in a movie theater. Specifically a second-run movie theater previously, so I was kind of coming from that angle, and I actually really did enjoy it. And had the place not closed, I would still be there. I wasn't planning on leaving. Right. So.
Let's see. What was your favorite thing or things actually about working at the Dollar Theater?
I didn't see the other employees a whole lot because I was usually upstairs. Part of that is because I wanted to be up there, in case something went wrong.
Right.
so I could.
So like you had like your lunch up there, your dinner up there. Was there like a refrigerator or a freezer for you?
There was a little refrigerator.
Okay.
You know, sometimes I'd step out very briefly and run to the McDonald's and come back.
Yeah.
I did generally eat up there. I brought my lunch a lot. You know, but I wanted to be there in case like something caught fire. Or,
right.
You know, there was a brain wrap or something like that. And instead of just so I could get there and already be there to fix the problem instead of having to run upstairs from, you know, being downstairs. But from when I did have interactions with the other employees there, I really liked everybody.
Okay.
You know, and everybody seemed really nice.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a brain wrap. Now, for people who've never worked at a theater, have never actually heard that kind of lingo for a movie theater, what is a brain wrap for that? What does it mean?
When you thread a movie, there's a piece that goes onto the platter that the movie's coming off of.
Like it's going from one platter to another, correct?
It's
okay.
usually it was the same at the theater in Virginia too, but it's like a 3-platter system.
Yeah.
And I always explain it to people as sort of like a large cassette tape, and that it comes off of one platter and it runs through the player, and then comes back and it's wound up onto the other platter.
Right.
But there's a piece that you stick onto the platter that the movie's coming off of, with a couple wheels and some rollers, and you feed the movie through there. And there's a little arm that controls the platter as far as it actually moving. And so you had to feed it through that properly, and then up through the rollers on the platter system itself and over to the projector. And that basically, if there was a brain wrap, that's usually there was some sort of an issue. Maybe the little arm that controlled the platter got stuck, or any number of things could happen. But it would start to wrap around the brain, which it's not supposed to do.
Right. Now, did that ever stop the film, or was the projector still going and the film was still going? But
it would generally, the movie would keep running. At some point, the film would just
snap.
It would get too tight, and it would, it would stop. It could snap. I've seen it happen, and the light from the projector actually burned through the frame on the movie. That was a problem that it didn't happen too much, but having worked in theaters as long as I have seen it happen a few times. I remember coming back upstairs one time. I had just gone downstairs and I clocked out for my lunch break, and I came back upstairs and something told me to check Theater 9, so I started to walk down there, and where the movie went through the sound part of the projector to play the sound, ultimately what I found out is that someone had put a splice into basically the middle of the reel. So they must have had some sort of a brain wrap or something happened. But when you do a splice, you're supposed to use 2 pieces of tape, but they only used 1.
Okay.
So when it came through the rollers after it went through the sound, instead of feeding through, it just bent in half, and the film got stuck. So the movie was still playing, and it pretty much, I think, would have played through to the end, but the take-up platter wasn't spinning, so it was just spinning film out onto the floor.
Ooh, okay.
So there was already a huge pile of film when I got back up there. So
did you shut off the film then, or how?
Yeah, I had to shut off the film because I had to, and I basically fixed that splice so that wouldn't happen again.
Right.
I even used colored splicing tape, which you're not supposed to use in the middle of a reel like that, but I did it so that I and other projectionists would know where that was. Right. So we could just keep an eye on it in case something like that happened again.
Right.
But I had to fix the splice, and then I wound the film back on there, and I mean, it only took like 5 minutes. The movie wasn't down that long.
Okay.
But if I hadn't had my lunch up there, so I wouldn't have caught that.
Right. Okay. Now, you've mentioned this a few times, the word splice. Now, is splice like editing a film almost for like Hollywood? What exactly is quite using the word splice? Again, for someone who may not know what that means. Is it like editing or no?
Basically, if you're putting a movie together, you've got to join the end of, let's say, reel 1 with the beginning of reel 2.
Right.
And it's basically a piece of tape that you put 2 pieces on each side.
Right.
And it connects the tape, so it just keeps feeding through the projector. If there's a brain wrap or something breaks, and you try to take as little out of the film as possible, like a frame or 2, which no one's going to notice.
Right.
And then you have to reassemble it, so you use the splicing tape. But the reason that you use two pieces is it just makes the splice stronger.
Right.
And they didn't do that on that other splice. They used one, and that's why it just bent in half and got stuck on the rollers.
Oh, okay. You mentioned about the films come in these big containers heavier than you. You said sometimes one, sometimes two. How many usually did fit in just one, would you say? Like how many film reels fit in like one box? Or did it vary?
I mean, it varied depending on how long the film was. Usually a children's film is like an hour and a half, so that'll maybe something like, it's been a little while now, but maybe like 4 or 5 reels, maybe. Okay. And that would fit in one box. But when you start getting into like 2.5, or like like Lord of the Rings, like 3-hour films, you're talking about like 2 boxes. And those are both pretty much jam-packed full.
And that's pretty much about 5 or 6 that you could fit in each box about. So you're looking at about maybe 10 or so.
Yeah, it's been a little while, and it's not like I paid the closest attention. It's like, oh, that's 5 reels in that box.
Yeah.
5,
6. 6. Okay. Now, I actually heard at one point the Maxi Saver was playing Indian films. Now, I heard that they kind of came like in garbage bags and stuff.
Essentially.
Like these. Okay, can you explain about how you were able to splice these things together by chance?
They came in these little black bags that were basically garbage bag material, but they didn't come on the regular reels that movies came on. They came on these little plastic centerpieces. And they didn't fit onto the table that we used to assemble the movies, so it was a bit of an ordeal putting those together, even more so taking them apart. And the frustrating part about that was, after all the trouble I went through to take the one apart that I took apart, the company that made the movie never even bothered to get it.
Right.
It just got thrown in a dumpster.
Now, is it true that they didn't really just bring them in boxes? They actually had a delivery driver. It wasn't like a UPS or anything. They actually just had some guy, correct? Because these were Indian films, right? Or Hindu or something?
That I don't recall, because they were already there when I got there.
Okay.
But generally there's a special company that delivers the movies.
Right.
I always assumed they just came through there, but the movies were usually already there when I got there on Thursday morning. Sometimes they showed up a bit late. Sometimes I'd see the guy. But having worked at the theater in Virginia, like, I've seen countless movies get dropped off. So I've actually seen the delivery company drop them off.
Okay.
Except for the one time that they had a new guy and he couldn't find the theater in Virginia, so instead of dropping off the movie, he just signed like a random, like, John Smith to the delivery form and never dropped off the movie, and our general manager had to track down what had happened to the film. I think ultimately was able to finish putting the movie together about a half hour before it was supposed to start playing.
Okay. Okay, it seems like every employee always has a customer story or something. Now, the thing is, I think you've had, if I'm correct, a lot more customer stories at your old place, but if you actually can give me maybe one story from your old place and maybe even like another kind of story up with the projector other than what you mentioned about the brain wrap and the thing and what happened in Theater 9, I'll let you choose which way you want to go, but can maybe at least get one story each from the old theater and then the Maxi too.
There's so many stories of the old one. I usually worked 4 to 12 at the theater in Virginia, Monday through Friday. I basically ran the place at night during the week.
Okay.
And the owner and the general manager weren't there. And I was sitting there, it was maybe like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and I always had everything done by 10:30. So I basically had about 2 hours to just sit there and read a book or whatever it was I was going to do.
Now, if I may ask, I'm sorry to cut you off already, but what time did you guys usually close your doors if you were out by like midnight or something?
Generally, the movies got out within the ballpark of midnight, sometimes before, sometimes as late as 12:30. That was pretty rare. There usually, when we had Lord of the Rings, there generally wasn't like a 9 or 10 o'clock show. The last one for that was usually about 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So otherwise, you'd be getting out of there at like 3 in the morning.
Right. Okay. But when did you guys usually close your doors for the last showing?
Like after everything was done?
Well,
Or as far as selling tickets?
well, for selling tickets, yeah, that's what I should have asked, yeah.
Um,
Because you said you were there till midnight.
they didn't really, they weren't, I mean, they were technically closed because the movies had started. And especially after, you know, I'd done the drop for the night and everything.
Right.
You know, but if somebody came in and they had exact change, I'd sell them a ticket.
Right.
I was like, if you, I mean, even if there was like a half hour of the movie left, if you want to pay to see it, I'll sell you a ticket. So.
Okay. Okay.
That was always kind of their call.
Right. Right. Okay.
You know, I'd tell them how long the movie had been running, how much was left.
Okay. So I apologize for interrupting there, but you were about to tell a story and stuff like that. I apologize. So you were saying that you got everything done by 10:30. You started reading a book, and then I kind of interrupted you. So if you want to kind of continue there.
I was sitting there, and this girl comes walking out of one of the theaters, and we had a small set of stairs, and she started to walk up the stairs, and I don't know why I happened to look up from my book, but I did, and she kind of stopped for a second, and then just fell face first on the floor, like unconscious.
Really?
I mean, she just ate it.
Ooh.
And so, at about that time, you know, another customer comes around the corner, so we're both kind of looking to see if she was okay, and she wasn't responding or anything. So I went and I called 911, and they sent out an ambulance. But by the time the ambulance got there, she'd come to.
Yeah.
But they still took her, I guess, just to take her to the hospital, make sure everything was okay. But I definitely remember that, just because that was the only time I ever had to call 911 when I was there. You know, and you don't usually see someone just, they're fine 1 second and then they just, fall face first the next. So that's always kind of stuck with me. Mm. It's actually the only time I ever had to call 911.
Okay. Okay. So any interesting stories about the Maxi Saver? Like I said, more upstairs by chance, or?
I was up there one morning, and it was still pretty early, and only 2 or 3 movies had been started. And I had just started Projector 2, and it started to walk back up towards the other end of the projection booth. And already a couple movies were running, and it gets pretty loud up there, and it wasn't. Not everything was running, but it was still kind of loud. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the bulb in Projector 2 exploded. And so there was this really loud pop. Almost like I don't want to say like a gunshot, but
right.
With that kind of volume. And it was loud enough that I heard it over the other projectors. And loud enough that it scared me because it was such a loud noise. And it's the first time that I'd ever actually experienced a projector bulb bursting. And of course, we had to stop the movie and ended up opening the casing. There was glass everywhere. We had to clean that out. And it was pretty wild, and that was how I learned how to change a projector bulb.
Okay. Now, may I ask who actually showed you? If you remember which one, or which person?
It's been so long. I believe it was Sam.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think it was him.
Okay. Before we move on, is there any other kind of stories you would like to throw out? Again, either theater or...
Not right offhand.
Okay. Since the Maxi Saver has closed, what have you been doing? What's been going on with jobs, life, relationships? Anything special going on with any of those three? And any order you want to go in that?
Well, the theater closed rather unexpectedly. Like I wasn't expecting it. I had planned on being there for a while, and it was unbeknownst to me at the time as the theater was closing, but it ended up becoming the catalyst for a lot of big changes in my life. I'd been at that job for about 2 years. I had planned on being there for a while. But the theater closed, and then I had a long-term relationship that I'd been in that ended shortly after the theater closed, and that actually resulted in me moving out of state for about a year.
Now back to Virginia?
Back to Virginia. I've only been back in Pittsburgh since February. So I'm still trying to figure things out at this point. But yeah, that was sort of the thing that set the last year in motion, was the theater closing.
Okay. Well, anything going on, like, if I may, what kind of jobs have you actually had in Virginia or back here in Pittsburgh since the theater has been closed?
Just grocery stores, which I'm not particularly thrilled with. I actually wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind getting back to a theater. I actually tried to get on at a couple theaters in Virginia, but I never could get. I'd even introduce myself to the managers there and sit down and talk to them, but I never could get calls back. Part of the problem is that everything's digital now, so no one really needs a projectionist. 4 or 5 years ago, I probably could have gone to Virginia and gotten a job like that, but
But since they moved from film, now was it true that the Maxi Saver someday was going to go digital before they closed down, or no?
I was told that they were going to go digital last year, which would be 2013.
Right.
The company was going to sink a lot of money into the building and fix the building up, and put in all digital projectors, and then they were going to teach me how to run the digital projectors. And of course, none of that happened because the theater closed. But that was the plan.
I know we've been talking about it the whole way through, but I feel like I still got to ask the question, like I have been. But how much do you really miss the Maxi Saver?
I actually miss it a lot. It's definitely one of the better jobs I've ever had. It's just above and beyond, so much better than anything I've had in the last year. I really clicked there. I clicked with everybody there. I liked the people there. It was just a good fit, and that's hard to find. And it took me a while to find that place, so it was kind of shocking when I found out it was going to close. I kind of had sort of a what am I going to do now moment.
Well, do you by chance remember who told you that this was going down?
Doug told me. I actually, as I understand it, I actually knew, I think, before most of the employees there knew, because he knew that I needed the job. And when he told me, they were still thinking that there was a chance that the theater wasn't going to close and that the landlord was just kind of playing hardball. But he told me because he knew I needed the job and he thought I should know what was going on. And that was Thursday night. So that's when I found out, and then the last day of business was Sunday.
Right. Now, did most people find out like Friday and Saturday, I believe?
As I understand it, I think most people found out Saturday.
Okay.
Because I think that's when they finally knew that, that the landlord wasn't playing hardball, and it was pretty much done. Like they were holding out hope up until that point. Which is why they weren't really saying much.
Which I would not blame the employees because it was such a good theater. You just never know what's going to happen, unfortunately, with life like that. But I don't blame people for trying to even hang on to a little bit of hope. You really thought this was a place that was never going to close down, and if the theater ever reopened, I know this is hypothetical. Would you ever think about ever going back?
If the theater reopened?
Yeah. Like that exact same building.
In a heartbeat.
Because you liked it that much. Okay. Did you want to kind of continue a little bit more on why?
Well, the best job that I've ever had was University Mall Theaters, and just in terms of not so much as far as what it paid. As far as jobs that I've had, it didn't pay as badly as some that I've had, but I've had jobs that have paid more. But it was a perfect fit. It's one of the only places that I liked to the point that I would actually go there when I wasn't at work, just to see people or just to stop in and see what was going on.
Of you going in, did you ever go in to see a movie, or did you ever just go in just to visit people?
At University Mall?
At the Maxi.
I saw a couple movies every so often at the Maxi Saver, not quite to the extent that I did in Virginia.
Okay.
You know, at that point, you know, I was living with someone, and there was other stuff vying for my attention. Whereas at the theater in Virginia, I was single, and you know, didn't have a lot going on, so and more opportunities to see movies. Also, there we usually would stay after on Thursday nights and watch one of the new movies. Just, you know, a lot of times it was something we wanted to see, or that was something that they had been doing when I first started there, and you know, I just kind of carried on that tradition and kept people doing that.
So like a little sneak peek so you could tell the customers the next day kind of thing for some people, or?
Basically.
Okay.
Which was not something that people can do anymore with digital movies, because every time you play that, that's logged. And that's, as I understand, sent to the company that made the movie, so you can actually get in trouble for just doing like an after-hour showing like that.
Right. Okay. I would say, could you describe the Maxi Saver in no more than 2 words?
Fun.
Okay.
Home. You know, it's I seem to have an affinity for working in movie theaters, but it's, you know, I mean, nothing has topped the place I worked at in Virginia, but this place came close.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. So before we depart here, do you have any like final last words about the Maxi Saver?
I wish it hadn't closed. You know, I'd not been planning on going anywhere. I was planning on being there for a while. I liked what I did. You know, that's extremely hard to find. I liked the people I worked with. That's hard to find, and you know, I think that combination is probably almost impossible. I mean, and you know, I'm not from Pittsburgh, but I know that it had been there for a long time, so it's a shame. You know, it's unfortunate. And I mean, I know that the building basically sits empty now. You know, it's too bad.